And next, we're going to bring up Jenny Haykin with Puget Sound Energy. Let's see here. There's Jenny. Hi, Jenny.
Hi.
So we were playing around with a backdrop for Jenny, and Jenny's segment is about conquering telecommuting fatigue. And oh, there your background all synced up. And so Jenny Haykin is the Integrated Leaves and Accommodations Program Manager with Puget Sound Energy. She's also one of our board members and over the training here at WSIA, and I work very closely with Jenny. Jenny is one of the ones who has been, she may not be aware of it, but kind of a resource for me as we've been preparing for these things. I've been learning a lot, and in our regular meetings, Jenny has been researching all the things you would want your integrated leaves and accommodations manager to research. So a special advantage we have here today having you with us, Jenny. I also want to mention that Jenny is certified in wellness by the Wellness Council of America, and was just quoted in the Wall Street Journal on a topic that Lee touched on in his segment. Is it okay to reveal your anxiety or depression to your boss? Is it okay to reveal to your boss that, hey, how am I doing? Well, I'm a little anxious and my alcohol consumption is going up. So I thought that was interesting how we mentioned that, and that's really where we're going with this next segment of how we keep you safe at work and all these things that Lee tries to do to keep workers safe in the work environment. And now a lot of us, especially I think a lot of us in attendance here today, our work environment has changed locations drastically. I have not been here in the WSA office since the Return to Work Summit August 4th, I think. And so we're all working from home, and our workplace has changed, our risks have changed, and how we cope with our mental space of work has changed. How do we separate work and home when they're the same place? And so Jenny is a great resource on this, and is going to be talking about some tips and tricks on how to keep your mental things together, and how to take care of yourself in the midst of all this. And being a lifelong claims manager, I know that claims managers are great at taking care of those around them, and they're also notoriously great at denying their own self-care, and because they're helpers and they want to help people, but they often neglect themselves. So Jenny, help us figure out how we're going to survive the next segment of this, whatever it is.
Okay, can you all see that all right? I hit from the beginning and there we go. Oops.
Sometimes it takes a second to sync up on this end.
Okay. Is it syncing?
Nothing yet.
Interesting.
Every presenter will go through this today, by the way.
Oh, let's see.
We're prepared for this.
I think I figured out what I did wrong here. Thanks for bearing with me, everybody.
There we go.
There we go. That
all right.
Better.
We're starting to see something.
Yeah.
There we go. Perfect.
Remember back in January, February, we had our regular lives, which for almost all of us were probably really busy. I know for me, it meant commuting back and forth from Seattle to Bellevue every day. I've got 2 teens who are too young to drive, but are in all kinds of activities. So I basically come home to drive in circles for a few hours, and then make dinner and drive in circles some more, getting everybody collected and fed. And it was, a tiring life, but it didn't compare to the fatigue that I felt, and probably most of you felt, when we started working from home. And for me, I'm a person who, it's got to be bedtime, I've got to be in bed, or I'm not sleeping. And I found myself literally struggling to stay awake during my work days. And I began to wonder over time, am I sick? Is there something wrong? What's going on here? Because the only time in my life I have ever been that tired is when I had my son, who was 6 months old, and I was pregnant with my daughter. I think I could have slept through that entire pregnancy. And that is the way I felt once we started telecommuting. And then I started talking to other people, and they were having the same experience with the same level of exhaustion. And I thought there must be something to this, and I want to know what it is, because I want to help myself and others understand what we can do about this. So why are we always so tired? It is not just one reason. There are actually several reasons contributing to our fatigue. And we're going to go through all 6 of the ones that I identified, talk about why they're fatiguing, and then from there, talk about what we can do about it, because there is a lot that we can do about it. So have your pens and pencils handy and paper, because there's a lot to write down, a lot of notes here on things that you can be doing for you, and you can choose the ones that work best for you. So let's start out with why virtual meetings are so exhausting. And the first reason has to do with eye contact. We have completely different eye contact patterns now than we did when we were seeing people in person. Typical eye contact looks like this, with a stranger, just 3 to 4 seconds at a time, and then looking away and looking at them again. And I don't know about you, but just even looking at this person, just a picture of a person that I don't know, made me feel uncomfortable when I looked at it for more than 3 to 4 seconds. For those folks we do know, we look at them, we do about 20 seconds at a time, and then look away and then look again. But when we're online, we're looking nearly constantly. So very fatiguing, just making that level of eye contact, which is so different than the norm for us. And the odd thing is that even though we're looking at everybody, we're not even making eye contact with them. And to make eye contact, which I'm trying to give the appearance of doing right now, we don't even look at the screen to do that. If you're trying to make eye contact with somebody or look that way, you actually look at the camera. You're not even looking at them on the screen. And body language is something that we don't see now because it's not in the frame when we are watching somebody, unless they're standing very far back from their camera. So no matter how hard we look, the cues that we are usually picking up all the time, the smaller facial features, the hand gestures, those sorts of things, we can't even see them now. But we do see ourselves, and that is totally different than the norm. We don't walk around with mirrors watching ourselves when we talk to other people. We don't do that in meetings. But now, and because of the virtual setup, we have these little pictures of ourselves, and it's very distracting. We want to make sure we're presenting well and we look okay. And so we're looking at ourselves in addition to all the clutter that's on the screen of everybody else who's in those meetings with us. And one thing, if you're super observant, you'll notice we've got the Prime Minister in here and the Chancellor of the Exchequer. It was sort of funny to find I've got some British leadership here in this particular picture, but this is a good example. You've got people with books on the shelves and things in their rooms, and I don't know about you, but I get sucked into that. I want to know what books they're reading, and I'm fascinated by what art people have on their walls, and so it can be very, very distracting, and more so for some of us than others. Clutter can really increase stress, and the studies that have been done on it, interestingly enough, show that is more true for women on average than men. Now, we're all individuals, and of course that's going to vary by who you are, but the reason for that is because historically women have been responsible for the homemakers and keeping the houses clean, and because of that we're more attuned to that. I'm going to be interested to see if those studies change over time, since gender roles are becoming more fluid now. But I can tell you that I am one of these people who's very easily stressed by clutter. And particularly, and some of you can relate to this, when I have company coming over, suddenly I see things that I totally wasn't even noticing before. So clutter can be very stressful for some of us. And online doesn't make a difference. It's stressful there too. So this whole combination of factors makes it all too much and not enough at the same time. We're seeing too many things that are irrelevant to our topics of our meetings, and we can't see the things that we're looking for, those cues and the hand signals and gestures. So there are ways to minimize virtual fatigue. And It's going to vary, you know, results will vary, but I can tell you when I made some of these changes, the results were immediate. My level of fatigue and my problems with barely being able to stay awake went away. So not a surprise, solution here is to remove unnecessary distractions on the screen. So here are the tips to do this. You want to get rid of that virtual clutter to the extent that you possibly can. Remember the Brady Bunch? They didn't have all sorts of things in the backgrounds of their pictures. You can ask users for meetings to use a consistent background. And depending on what program you're using, you ought to be able to just download a background off of the web, upload it into your system, email it to the folks you're meeting with and say, use this background so that everybody's using the same one. The programs that I've seen, WebEx, Zoom, tend to have backgrounds that, you know, everybody can use the same one, but you're still going to have palm trees in the background or other things. So having just that neutral color background can be really helpful. Now, that being said, I have figured out how to do this in WebEx. Didn't have any trouble at all. But as you saw when I was getting online, I did have problems doing it in Zoom because what happened was it didn't obscure the things in my background. They were still there and they were kind of undulating. So if anybody knows of a tip on how to get a solid background in Zoom, if they could use the chat or Q&A feature to let us know how to do that, I am very interested because I use mostly WebEx, but I do use Zoom sometimes as well, and I'm sure most of you probably use Zoom. The programs that we're using to watch meetings also have a speaker-only view option, and this is tremendous because just focusing on the person who's speaking and not having all that other visual clutter can be extremely helpful, particularly to those of us who are sensitive to clutter. And removing that self view is another option. And that's taking away that mirror so that we're not looking at ourselves and how we appear to everybody else. We're taking away that distraction. And you can just do it the old-fashioned way. There are a lot of meetings where you really don't need to see the person and you can just set it up as a good old-fashioned phone meeting or just pick up the phone and call them.
Jenny and I talked on the phone yesterday. It was delightful.
Thank you. So reason number 2, movement. Remember this? We used to walk to the photocopier or to the break room to get coffee, or we walked to meetings, or we went out at lunch and maybe grabbed some takeaway, or went to get office supplies in the supply room, or, you know, had to walk to our cars or the bus or our bicycles or whatever it was, however we were getting to and from work if we were going to a central location for work. And all of those things, for those of us who are working at home, are gone now. We're maybe walking a few feet to get to our work area. This is what happens as a result. Prolonged sitting reduces our blood flow. And it's our blood flow that is bringing oxygen to our brain and body. So we're actually depriving ourselves of some of the oxygen that ordinarily would be going to our brain and body by not doing those walking activities at work. Being sedentary has really serious consequences. I'm sure you probably saw the articles a few years ago of sitting is the new smoking. Being sedentary can impact blood sugar and encourage disease. It may even age us faster. It can also increase the likelihood of depression. So solution, no surprise, keep moving. Move throughout the day, even while you're working. You can get up, you can start doing squats, you can do jumping jacks while you're listening to me. I'm not gonna know. Go for it. Get some exercise, get some movement in whenever you're in meetings where people can't see or hear you. That is a great opportunity. And when you're not doing activities that have you glued to your computer, feel free to move around and get a little exercise, get that blood flowing. The studies that I read said to walk, depending on the study, every 30 to 60 or 60 minutes. The study that I read about walking every 60 minutes said to walk for 5 minutes every 60 minutes. And really important note here, because I'm sure a lot of us work out several days a week, and that is really great for your body, your muscle development, for cardiovascular workout, but it doesn't change the fact that when you're sitting at your desk or wherever you're sitting now, because we're telecommuting, that blood flow is being limited by being sedentary. So even if you work out an hour a day, 2 hours a day, you still need to be getting up and moving during your workday to really have that advantage of keeping your blood flowing. Reason number 3, insufficient ergonomics. I don't know about you, but when this whole thing started, I was at my dining room table with a dictionary under my feet, and I had a pillow on my chair to get myself high enough, and it was not ideal. It was as good as I could get it, and it was very far from ideal. And as you all know from working in this field, awkward posture can harm your musculoskeletal system. There are a lot of different things that can happen to our bodies, and a real common one is that sitting forward with our heads forward like that, because the farther forward your head goes, the more it weighs to your neck. And that can actually even result in having scar tissue develop in your neck. It can affect the muscles and weaken the tone, so that even when you're walking and standing up, you're still a little hunched over from all those years of hunching over at your desk. It can affect your discs. It can result in having that bone to bone that pinches your nerves. It can affect the clarity of your mind and shorten muscles and affect circulation and even result in bone spurs. So a whole bunch of issues here with not setting your office up or wherever you're working ergonomically. The flip side of this is that if you're sitting well and have everything ergonomically correct for yourself, you can concentrate better and it improves your energy. And you can twist and turn more easily, and you don't have that pinching going on in your shoulders. And you can create your spine tone and strength evenly, improve your disc size even, and your hips will be much more flexible. I don't know why in this picture they have the skeleton's hands that way. I just wanted to mention that neutral posture is when you have your hands facing each other like this, and your elbows are down at your sides, and your arms are at roughly a 90-degree angle, or a little bit more open than that. So I don't know what was going on with the skeleton, but I just wanted to point that out. And as you know, repetition with awkward posture increases the risk of harm. There are actually 3 factors that lead to ergonomic risk. Repetition is one of them, awkward posture is another, and force is the third. When you add 2 or 3 of those together, it creates a risk of harm. Repetitive strain injuries are something I know you're all familiar with. It's the painful or uncomfortable conditions of the muscles, tendons, nerves, and it's usually due to repeated motions or overuse. And I'm sure in your careers in workers' compensation, you have seen all of these injuries. I know I have seen them in people for years, over and over and over again, and they're for the large part preventable. So not a surprise here, the solution is to have your setup correct, to make that a priority. Assure that it is correct specifically for you and your body. First thing you can do, which is really easy wherever you're sitting right now, is make sure that everything that you have, maybe it's your coffee or your notepad or your mouse, make sure all of those things are in that neutral reach zone. And the reason, and this is sort of ironic to me because we talked about moving, and if you have things out of reach, then you're having to move to get to them. But when you're doing sitting and you're not moving and then you suddenly lunge forward, that actually creates an ergonomic risk for you. So having everything in that neutral zone, and then you have some things that in your extended reach zone where it's like, okay, well, you know, I'm not going to use that very often. Maybe I only reach for that once a day, and I don't have room in my neutral zone. Here's a picture of a good setup with a couple exceptions, but your chair hopefully has a lumbar support, and that fits in, you have it adjusted to fit the curve in the curve of your spine. If you have the curve of your chair pushing you elsewhere, it's going to put you out of alignment. So you want to make sure that if you do have a lumbar curve in your chair, or you're using a lumbar pillow, that it fits nicely into that curve in your spine, and that your wrists are flat. You want to make sure you're sitting on your sit bones and that your thighs are parallel to the floor or slope slightly down, and that you can bear weight on your feet so that not all the pressure is going on to your bottom. And if you look closely at this picture, there are actually a couple things wrong with it. Let's see if you can tell what they are. First of all, his monitor is not set up correctly. And in the next slide, I'll show you how to have the monitor set correctly. The next one is a little more subtle. Right there. You want to make sure that you have space between the back of your knee and your chair, 2 or 3 fingers worth. So if you put your hand right now between the back of your knee and your chair, if you can get 2 or 3 fingers in there and not more, you've got it just right. If you can get a whole bunch of fingers in there and you have room left over, or you just have all 5 fingers in there and it's, you know, that's the measurement, that means that your seat pan is actually too far back for you and your thighs are not getting enough support. And the other side of that is if your chair is too far forward and it's pressing on the back of your legs, then that creates a compression that impacts your blood flow and can make things really uncomfortable for you. So something to consider there. So here's where you want your eyes to hit your screen, unless you're wearing bifocals, and then that's a whole different story. But the top third of the screen is the ideal place to have your eyes reaching the screen. And that in conjunction with keeping your neck straight will really help with a lot of the fatigue issues that come with sitting improperly. And like most of the pictures I found on ergonomics, for some reason, there's something really wrong with this picture. So if you want to take a close look, there it is right there. I don't know why anybody thinks sitting in heels that size is a good idea. But it isn't. You want to be able to bear weight on your flat feet, not wearing heels. And hopefully, since most of us, or just about all of us, are telecommuting now, you're not wearing shoes like that in your house. If you want more information and your company doesn't already have it, which they may, all you have to do is search proper desk ergonomics for more information, and you will find videos and diagrams and articles and anything that you need as a reference to help you figure out how to adjust your work area as best as you can. And, you know, since we are, a lot of us at home, there's some improvising. Like I said, I was using some dictionaries and that kind of thing to help me out. If those things don't work and you can't get things to the right proper heights, then there may be some purchasing of you know, some risers or footrests or back pillows or whatever involved in getting things right for you.
Hey, Jenny, there's a comment here that says, other thing wrong with picture is the lady's arms are too far stretched forward, would be better with a keyboard closer.
Oh yeah, that's actually a really good point. I missed that one. Very good. Yeah, we want to have our keyboards right up to the edge of our desk. I don't know why she has them that far forward. And if you take a look, her wrists are really compressed on that sharp edge of the table because she has it so far forward. So very good. And I wanted to mention, you know, feel free to you know, have your comments, your questions as we're going along here. We do have time for people to ask questions as we're going along if you have any. So feel free.
Another question actually here, can you quickly mention where the screen should be if you do indeed have bifocals?
Bifocals is a really tricky one. And my recommendation to people is they actually get computer glasses. It's really hard to, it's possible, and I don't even know the answer to that on how to do it well, so you're not doing this all the time, but a different kind of glasses will work better for a computer screen than having the bifocals.
Actually, I'll barge in here on this topic.
Oh, good.
I just got new glasses earlier this week,
okay.
And I don't have my Office HD progressives yet. Those will be in next week.
Those sound fancy. What are those?
Yeah, well, I've learned a lot, and I don't have a problem mentioning I got them from Costco, one of our proud WSIA members, and but the person there was very helpful in helping me understand a lot of this new technology that exists. And previously I had a set of glasses that were office glasses. They were just basically dialed in at my arm's reach. And my prescription had changed on one side of that. And so those need to be updated. But the HD Office Progressives is the idea is that it's a progressive lens, but it's all focused on just outside of arm's reach in. And so it gives you that progressive. Now, I've only speak from what I've been told. I haven't experienced them yet, but so apparently that is kind of a new thing that is coming about with everybody working from home, or maybe it's been around and I haven't been to the eye doctor in a while. But the idea is to give that progressive lens for a desk or working space, and then I have a different set of progressives that I'm wearing today, which are standard, far, and near. But then another thing is the blue lens coating, which I notice is the blue light blocker. But I notice here, looking at my image, I should have my self view off here so I can't see myself. But I noticed that it does create a lot of glare from my monitors for you looking at me. So interesting parts of that. But glasses, I've had to wear glasses since I was in 4th grade, and it wasn't cool. And so it's glasses can affect you so much. And I've noticed just within the past couple of days of having fresh prescriptions, it really makes my job easier. That sounds crazy, but there is less stress involved because I can see what I'm doing. I know that sounds simple, and my wife has been telling me that for some time, but finally got around to it. But as far as bifocals, that's my experience with those. Another question here, what do you think about under the desk stair step bike exercise equipment that some people use for blood flow and exercise while working?
Well, and I can give you a couple different answers to this. So I know at our company, our safety department is a huge no, because the last thing they want is somebody standing up on something where they're going up and down and then falling over. But that being said, if you can do it safely and focus while you're doing that, or if there's something you can use while you're sitting, any movement, even if you're sitting, helps with that blood flow. So even if you have a little stepper thing that you can use while you're sitting down, that will make a difference. Any other questions we can answer here before we move on?
I don't see any others. Quick question about stand-up. Any thoughts on stand-up workstations? No, I've used it myself.
So that changing of positions throughout the day is really good for you. The mistake that people tend to make with the stand-up workstations is they just stand there and they're doing static standing. And static standing is not better for you than static sitting. So it's really that changing positions. Now, the advantage of standing is that you can move around more while you're standing. And if you have one of those systems where you can sit, stand, sit, stand, sit, stand, that's really good. And I can tell you, I even was at one presentation where they were saying, if you just get up and down and up and down and up and down 3 times every time you get out of your chair, that'll add, like, I forget what they said, it was like 80,000 squats to your, to your year or something like that. So really, that movement is a really, really good thing. Being static in any position for a long time is not.
Yeah, I've had to kind of avoid some back problems myself, and I've found that the importance of having a stand-up workstation is having a bar, something to put, or a block of wood or something to put your foot on.
Yeah.
Because that kind of helps you shift from one side to the other and that sort of thing. So I've been able to set that up at home. I had that set up at home prior to this as well. But I also noticed that now that I'm working in different parts of the house, you got to get creative. If you're going to be outside of your normal space, you got to get creative about where your monitor lands and such. So.
Yeah, you do.
Seeing no other questions.
All righty, let's move on to the next slide then. We talked about this with the proper desk ergonomics. Okay, and the next one is lighting, and there's a lot of information about lighting, so we're going to spend some time on this. Light actually impacts our brain chemistry. And the first one I want to talk about is cortisol. That's that stress hormone. That's our flight or fight hormone, and that impacts our mood, our motivation, our fear. And the purpose of it evolutionarily, if you think about cavemen, if they had a saber-toothed tiger after them, that was a really good chemical to have firing to let you know that there was danger, and you had to probably not not freeze, but to hopefully flee or fight if you needed to. But when we're just sitting around doing our work, here's what happens. Our monitor light increases our cortisol, which increases our stress, and that impacts our ability to sleep. So having the lighting from our monitors really actually isn't beneficial when it comes to cortisol. And the other problem with the lighting from monitors is it can just plain be too bright, and that can really result in eye strain, dry eye. Really can be a challenging thing to deal with. Another brain chemical worth mentioning here is melatonin, and that is a hormone that induces sleep. And it's also an antioxidant and an anti-inflammatory, so a lot of good things going along with the melatonin there. Too much screen time, too much blue light causes our melatonin to drop. And if you're working late or you've got too much light on near or after bedtime, that's really going to impact your melatonin, which is going to impact your ability to sleep. It makes it harder to fall asleep. It makes it harder to stay asleep. The other brain chemical I wanted to mention is serotonin, which is a mood regulator, and it's nicknamed the happy hormone. Insufficient light reduces our production of serotonin. So if you're working in a place that doesn't have any windows, there are some things that you can do to help mitigate the reduction of serotonin. Another thing that we have coming our way is the upcoming dark winter, which is also a contributing factor to reducing serotonin. And it really impacts people in the Pacific Northwest. There's a disproportionately high number of people in the Pacific Northwest who suffer from seasonal affective disorder than compared with other sunnier parts of the country. Lighting can also cause eye strain in a couple different ways. Too much light can cause eye strain. And the other one, and you were just talking about this on your glasses, Lloyd, glare. So solution, no surprise there, lighting changes. What are those changes? What can we do? First of all, adjust your monitor to be the same brightness as the room. If you're in a darker room with a really bright monitor, that's going to have some of those negative effects on your eyes and the brain chemistry. And if your room is bright and your monitor isn't as bright as the room, you're probably going to have a hard time seeing and have eye strain. If you don't have any windows or it's dark out, you can use full spectrum light bulbs. They mimic natural light and help a lot with that. And get outside when you can. This was a horrible week for that. We didn't want to go outside this week because we couldn't breathe outside. But it's supposed to rain, and so next week, when you can, take a few walk breaks outside if it's not raining, and really get a chance to absorb some of that natural light. And reduce any overly bright lighting. If you can dim your lights or close blinds or drapes so that you're not having that fatigue from the really bright light. And eliminate glare. Can be as easy as closing blinds, getting a glare guard for your computer monitor, or just moving your monitor. And reduce your total screen time if you can. We had that slide about using the phone. You don't need to have your screen on when you're talking to people on the phone. That's a good time to hit that little button on your screen and just turn your screen off. Maybe you do have to have it on, I guess, if you're looking things up. But if you're not looking things up, you don't need to have it on. So take advantage of opportunities where you don't need to be on the screen. One of the things that I was doing when the pandemic started, I was on the crisis management team. I was doing, and I still am, and I'm trying to do everything I can to be as informed as possible in the moment about the pandemic and how to help people. And I found that what I was doing was I was going from my computer screen to my phone, doing something that has now been dubbed doom scrolling, where I was going through the news, trying to read the latest on the pandemic and what did I need to know. And so I was using my breaks for more screen time, which was not helping me. So use your break time wisely and try to stay away from screens if you can. And especially reduce that evening screen time. Now this is going to vary from person to person a bit, and I saw studies that said different things, but somewhere in that range of 30 to 120 minutes before bed. Turn off the shows that you're watching, turn off the computer, the phone, and just let yourself get ready for bed. Now, if winter impacts your mood, it does not have to. There have been study after study over decades now that find that 10,000 lux light boxes really help with symptoms of depression in people who are working where it's not light enough out and they're not getting enough natural light or simulated natural light to really help them keep their serotonin production up. These are available on Amazon, and I can tell you the last time I gave this presentation, somebody actually ordered one before I was even done with the presentation. They're not hard to find, and very easy solution where I actually had one employee, I can tell you, who called me originally because she wanted to bring her dog to work as a companion animal because she was having such a hard time with a down mood in the middle of winter. And I suggested to her that she talk to her doctor about getting one of these light boxes, and she did. And she told me a few weeks later, she called me up and she said, I was so down and had so little energy, I couldn't even come home from work and do my chores. I wasn't making dinner, I wasn't doing any of the errands, I wasn't cleaning, I was too wiped out. She said, I got this light box and I'm completely back to normal. So they can have some pretty miraculous effects for a lot of people. This comes from the American Ophthalmic Association, and this is the recommendation to prevent eye strain. The 20-20-20 rule: take a 20-second break every 20 minutes to look at something 20 feet away. And if you're in a place where you don't have a window to look out where you could look 20 feet away, then try to get near a window or go outside or whatever you need to do to give yourself that space so that you can look that far away. Now, reason number 5, interruptions and distractions. And we had interruptions and distractions in the office, but now we have new ones.
Jenny, can I interrupt you?
Absolutely.
Okay, because I wanted to catch you before you got to the next segment here, because I missed this question on the last one, and I think you might have some insight there, given your Puget Sound Energy and having workers who work from their vehicles. It says, can you comment on correct ergonomics for employees such as police officers who have to do data entry and complete reports on laptops in their vehicles?
Oh, yeah. So I have been over that road many times because it's very, very difficult to get a driver's seat set up so that you can work on a laptop ergonomically. And there are things, a common one is called a mongoose arm, where there's an arm where you can kind of pull your laptop over, but you can't pull it over so far that it's hitting your steering wheel. So there are actually things that you can get that you set it on your steering wheel and it'll hold your laptop in front of your steering wheel. But the problem with that is, for somebody like me who's really small, that's no problem. I push my seat back, I got plenty of room. But if you're a more average or larger person, you're not going to have room between you and the steering wheel and your laptop. So it's a really difficult problem to solve. One thing I recommend is if people can get into a different seat where they don't have that steering wheel blocking, and they may not have time to do that if they have a really high productivity job. But anything to get that monitor in line with your body so you're not doing this, because doing this is really bad for your posture.
Anything with voice recognition software or anything, or are people just averse to using that?
It actually works pretty well these days. When I first started working with voice recognition software in the 90s, you could only use discrete speech.
Jenny, I accidentally muted
you.
Me. I'm sorry. I meant to mute myself, and well, you got muted, and then I couldn't unmute you. Sorry.
Okay, so I tell you about it. Voice recognition. It used to be only discrete speech, but now it actually picks us up. We speak at about 120 words a minute, and it works pretty effectively. The problem is there's still the looking at the screen. So if you're in a vehicle and you're using voice recognition, you're still going to want to see your screen. Yeah. So, but the advantage is if you can get a separate screen that is not the whole laptop, and you can just hook that onto your steering wheel, that might be a good solution. So good suggestion, Lloyd. Are there any other questions? Alrighty, we'll move ahead here. All right, so we have all these new disruptions. And I'm going to tease the folks from Everly Vivian. They actually did have a cat in their office back in the day when they were all working in the office. But most of us didn't have cats in the office, and now we have our cats or dogs, distracting us. And the temperature in our homes may not be as well regulated as the temperatures at work. I know in my house in particular, I've got this 1950s house with a furnace, and some rooms are hot and some rooms are cold, and I'm usually freezing wherever I am. And then comes the winter where people are, going to be cold, and in the summer they might have been too hot. And we have got, a lot of us have kids, and maybe our partners are distracting us. So a lot going on. And that loss of control creates stress, which can be exhausting for us. And that can affect our concentration and make us more error prone and more exhaustion prone. So not a big surprise, the solution is to take some control. There are going to be things you cannot change, but there are going to be things that you can if you haven't already. We made a lot of changes initially when we first got sent home, just to get us through. But we didn't know that we were going to be home for as long as we've been, and we're not going to be back soon. So this isn't short term anymore. It's time to really think seriously about what longer term changes do we need to make. And I know for me, it went from being in the dining room where I was completely in everybody's way and things couldn't possibly be 100% ergonomic for myself, to moving into the bedroom with the desk that I bought and had the legs shaved down so that I'm, because I'm really short, and that was better. But then I was, in the way in the bedroom. And so I actually ended up going to extremes when my company said, we're going to have you continuing telecommuting even when this is over, a few days a week or 2 days a week. I actually had an office built in my driveway. So I'm actually sitting in a trailer in my driveway because I was like, okay, I got a lot of years of my career left. I gotta find a longer term solution. So not everybody, may necessarily have the resources or the property or the whatever to do that, but really think seriously about what it is that you can do to make those long-term changes. Because even when COVID is over, your employer may say, we want you telecommuting more. Identify and fix what you can, and figure out that problem, figure out the ones that you can solve, and go ahead, move forward. Reason number 6 is diet and hydration. And I'm just going to focus on sugar primarily, because that tends to be the main fatiguing thing that we can consume. Here is the sugar addiction perpetual cycle. You eat sugar, you like it, you crave it, and it has addictive properties. It lights up that same part of your brain that heroin lights up. Your blood sugar levels spike, dopamine is released in your brain, your addiction, mass insulin, and creates that addiction effect. Mass insulin is secreted to drop your blood sugar levels. Your blood sugar levels drop rapidly. And then you've got high insulin levels that cause immediate fat storage, and your body craves the lost sugar high. And so you've got the hunger, you've got the cravings, and you've got increased appetite, and the cycle just goes over and over and over again. And that sugar affects attention span and short-term memory, as well as mood. And then there, of course, is the sugar crash. And the sugar crash results from too much sugar, which raises the insulin, drops the blood glucose, and then your energy just drops. This one was really interesting to me. Hydration is a huge issue as well. And this one is just for you to think about, how much water loss do you think impacts your cognitive function? Is it A, 10 to 12%? B, 30 to 35%, or C, 1 to 2%? And the answer to this really surprised me. It only takes a 1 to 2% water loss to impact our attention and our alertness, because water facilitates the exchange of nutrients and toxins, and even a small reduction in how much we have starts to have negative effects. So not surprising, the solution, treat yourself to the good, healthy stuff. At offices, the temptations were hard to avoid because other people were providing them. I literally had somebody in my office that would walk around with a box of donuts a couple times a month, asking anybody if they wanted a donut. And you may have had similar experiences where you are or where you worked, and maybe the lunchroom was full of treats or people had stuff on their desks. When we're telecommuting, we can totally eliminate those temptations if we take control over our work environment and there are people in our family who aren't bringing that stuff in. And make healthier choices with what snacks we have available. We don't have to cut out snacking. We just have to choose healthier options. And keep hydrated. And the best way to do that is water. My son is a soccer player, and he asked me the other day, he said, what's the best sports drink? And I said, water. And you can also do tea, particularly green tea is really good for you. Black coffee. When you start adding the creamers and the sugars and everything, then every time you're taking a sip, you're actually going down that rabbit hole with the unhealthy stuff. So better to just have it plain if you can drink it that way. So small changes can make a big difference. I gave you a lot of suggestions today of things that you can try. And my hope for you is that you will pick things that you can change and start making those changes so that you can feel better during your workday. And it can be, as we talked about, changing the meeting setup. And that, again, that's changing the backgrounds, using the phone more and the screen less, moving more. There's ergonomics, lighting, managing the distractions, and diet and hydration. So all of those things can be of a help, and please choose what is going to work for you and start making changes so that you can feel better. Thank you very much. I want to give time now for questions.
Not seeing any questions right away there, but I guess a couple things that jumped out at me, Jenny, here. I had never heard the term doom scrolling.
Yeah.
And, I had to kind of lock myself out of some of my social media accounts for a little bit, because I couldn't stay away, and it was affecting me. And it's one of those things that, you gotta self-regulate, and it's not easy to do, especially when you're wanting information.
Yeah.
And I think in today's world, information, you gotta be careful where you find it.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
that doom scrolling can be not only a time waster, but it can really affect your energy and your mood when you're trying to focus on work. The other thing that I think or term I've heard is the COVID accelerator, where we've and your organization has kind of exemplified that, where they had a long-term plan to work more remotely, and the COVID accelerator pushed that plan forward, and there's no point in going back, is kind of the way I understand it.
Yeah, I mean, I know our company is already looking for ways to reduce our real estate footprint. Other companies are doing that as well, because they're finding, hey, this actually works. People are productive at home. I have a question here. It says, there's a time of day when people are more focused, and how has post-lunch afternoon fatigue changed? So in regards to the first one, it absolutely varies from person to person. And you've probably seen this in your own household if you're living with multiple people. You may have people in the household who are super energetic when they wake up in the morning, and the people who take hours to wake up and eat a few cups of coffee. But then in the afternoon, that is their total activity time, where they're focused and can work a lot better. And it's a matter of just figuring out for you, when is that most productive time? And if you're able to alter your workday in such a way that the things that take the most brain power and concentration are done during those hours during the day, that's great. And how has the post-lunch afternoon fatigue changed? Well, I don't know necessarily that it has, but I do know that if you were somebody who, when you were working in the office, you went out to lunch and had a heavy meal and then came back, whereas when you're home, you're like, what can I throw together that's light? Then you're probably doing better now than you were before. But it really depends on how much you eat at lunch and what you're choosing to eat. Because if you're eating those really, high fat foods, those are going to wear you down. And if you're choosing a lot of fruits, fresh fruits and vegetables, and eating salads, you're going to have a really different experience after lunch and how you feel.